Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits using technology. Joining me today is Jess Campbell to talk about Slack channels and nonprofits and communities. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Likewise. So I'd love starting the first question of what is your superhero origin story? That is to say, how did you get started working with nonprofits?
Ooh, to keep it short, I fell into it like so many of us. I was working with some families in Boulder, Colorado as a babysitter. I was still in college. And one of them knew I was looking for a new venture, and she recommended I go attend this volunteer training. Little did I know that that was the very first training for this startup nonprofit that I just became obsessed with. And long story short, became their first paid employee. And it was an organization that served families with critically ill children. And as the number two person behind the founder, I was thrown into the midst of everything from volunteer management to drop offs to coordinating all of our families, working with donors, and I loved it. I do remember saying to my boss's husband one day, I would love to start my day not breaking out in a sweat because there was a lot of even manual labor tied to the job. And he was like, I think you picked the wrong job. But I remember waking up every day thinking, like, if I didn't have to get paid, I would still do this work. Unfortunately for me, the work was super intense for what was a 22-year-old. And I just knew in my gut that if I continued to do those frontline services, working directly with the families, that I was going to burn out. And that's when I decided to take a different approach to my nonprofit work and focus on the marketing and fundraising and the storytelling side of things, which led to a lot of positions at different organizations, huge behemoth, $100 million budget size to like teeny tiny startups. And then after doing that for a long time and starting a family, the pace and the schedule of working as an in-house fundraiser just no longer fit my lifestyle. And that's when I decided to break off and be an advisor and a consultant to nonprofits in the fundraising space. And that's where I sit today.
I love the fact that you would do what you do for free. And that's really, to me, a marker of saying that you are in the spot that you should be. Because one of
Hmm.
my favorite questions is to ask new people, people I've just met, if you didn't have to work for money, how would
Hmm.
you spend your time? And then, of course, the
Hmm.
follow up question is, why aren't you doing that now? But the
Hmm.
idea of, and I would answer the question the same way. I would do exactly what I'm doing now if I didn't have to work for the money.
Hmm.
So that's awesome to
Isn't that
hear.
lucky? I mean, that's so lucky. Yeah, not a lot of people get that, especially out of the gates. I'll tell this other story. When I had been doing that work for maybe 14, 18 months, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to do this work. And my boss, who had started this startup nonprofit I had been working for, was actually a really famous producer in Hollywood. She produced movies like Mrs. Doubtfire and the first three Harry Potter movies. And she was like, maybe you should go to Los Angeles and be a production assistant. She had had a great career. She really loved the work. And so I said, okay. And so I went and did that for about 6 months. And I found the industry just to be so wasteful and so opposite of the life changing work I had been doing with this nonprofit that I only lasted 6 months and quickly came back to the work that I was doing. So I tried other stuff.
On your LinkedIn profile, you say that you're a storyteller, a fundraiser, a connector, a mobilizer, an organizer, a leader. Can you break that down for me?
Yes, I think that stories are our most powerful tool when it either comes to business or operating our nonprofits. It's a tale as old as time. It's how people have been community for centuries. And I think that it's the core of sharing impact, creating opportunities for people to take action. And for me, it's my nucleus. I tell stories around my business. I'm a very much open book. I want to share my path with fellow nonprofit consultants in hopes that it speeds their journey along. And then I teach my nonprofits on the flip side how to tell better stories so that they can rally support They can invoke feelings, they can create emotion, they can ultimately create bigger impact. And there's good storytelling, great storytelling, and really bad storytelling. And it it doesn't take a lot to go from really bad to super great, but you have to know what to do. And so I kind of see it as my mission to teach people how to do that. It creates vulnerability, it creates connection, it just does all these amazing things. And so for me, that's the nucleus to being a leader, to being a community builder, to being all these things.
There's something very, not want to say historic, but very basic, very innate among us to be able to want to share and hear stories. We relate to stories
Mhm.
more than anything else. So, and the right
Mhm.
story, of course, too. I mean, to your point, there's always bad stories, but a good story can stay with you your entire life. I remember stories from when I was a kid, just
Mhm.
about a story about something that never really happened, but he explained it in a way that stuck with me even to this moment. And I think that's extremely powerful.
Yeah. I'm not a neuroscientist. I've read a few books, but telling stories triggers a chemical reaction in our brain, to your point, that creates a memory that's like 3 to 5 times more powerful than relating data, facts, figures. So if you can weave the two together, they often are the most powerful things that you do remember for a very, very long time, which is why I'm like, everyone should be telling stories.
So if that's the nucleus of your profile, then the next ring would be fundraising. And then,
Yeah, fundraising, marketing, relationship building, donor engagement, all of those kind of tie together in my style. I would say, like, as a fundraiser, I, if I was to like put myself on paper compared to others, I'm probably not the world's best fundraiser. The amount of times I've had to actually go out and ask people, hey, will you give us number of dollars? Is really few and far between, because what my superpower is the relationship building part. Most often, my donors would offer or suggest or recommend a gift to me before I had to actually make the ask. So I have some counterparts that are really truly masters at the asking and the major gifts and all of those things. I would not say that that is my specialty, but I'm really good at attracting donors and then nurturing them and relationship building with them to bring them along for the ride.
and then the connector and mobilizer part, how would you describe that? Because connector could mean people to
Yes.
people, organizations to
Yes.
organization. And then mobilizing is getting people, I guess, to get on the same page, to agree on a particular path. How would
Yes.
you describe it?
Yes. So, you know how there's those people out there that you go to them if you want to read a new book or try a new restaurant or try a new brand. I've just always been that person. The way my brain thinks is in connective tissues. And so when I hear of someone having an information gap, a problem, a struggle, it I don't even think about it. It just automatically happens to point them to a resource that can be helpful. So for example, in my work, I'm getting requests from nonprofits constantly. Just, do you know a grant writer? Just, do you know a coach? Even today, someone reached out to me about doing one on one coaching that I don't do. So I recommended someone that I really, really trust. And it goes across the board in my personal and professional life. I always joke, like, you cannot enter a conversation with me without getting some sort of recommendation. And I think it stems from a curiosity that I just have about life. So I'm constantly taking in information, reading books, trying new things. I really, really like the best. And I go great lengths to uncover the best, whether that's olive oil or whether that's a destination or whether that's a professional resource. And so I've built this trust among my various communities where if someone asks me for a recommendation, they trust the person I send along. And it's really worked out, and it's no sweat off my back. I love doing it. I'm kind of like a matchmaker. It's, yeah, definitely another thing that I do for free and will continue to do for free, because it's just how my brain works.
Did you ever read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point? Because he talks about three types of people that make change happen. The first ones are mavens, those who are knowledgeable about things.
Huh?
There are salespeople, those who are convincing others or by selling an idea. And then the connectors, those who link and distribute information. Would you identify with a connector and that by that
Yes.
definition?
Yes, I'm definitely a linker, whether I
Cool.
want to or not. It's just how my brain works. It's just so funny. And it's funny to me because I will see people out there and I can watch them when I'm speaking to them that their brains don't work like that. And it's just so funny to me because it's how mine does. So absolutely I would identify like that.
So multifaceted
Yeah.
profile. What would you say then occupies the greatest amount of time in your day? In a typical, average day, family aside, of course, I'm talking more on the professional side.
Mhm.
What does your day look like typically?
Mm. So I will say right now I'm in a unique season. A few weeks ago, looked at my calendar and looked at a to-do list that has been ever growing. And I said, enough is enough. And so I essentially canceled 90% of my calls and meetings and decided that the 9 weeks of summer that I have are going to be used to optimize my business, do just a whole bunch of stuff that I have been putting off for eons and eons. That involves bringing on two new team members, getting super organized, doing some planning and deep thinking. And for me, that requires space. I have found over the last 5 or 6 years of running my business that one on one calls, while effective and great, are also super, super draining for me. And so I'm just not one of those people that can do calls with 3 or 4 people every day, all week long. I need just a lot of space. And so that's what my season is right now. I'm doing everything from, like I said, creating procedures for my new operating procedures for my new teammates, switching email service providers, which is just something I've been not wanting to do, but needing to do, cleaning up my website, doing a whole bunch of back end work so that sometimes you need to slow down so that you can speed up later. And that's the season I'm in now. Come fall, I will go into a very different season, which is a lot of one on one client work where I do done for you services. I only do it one time a year and I only do it with about 8 organizations. But for essentially 8 weeks back to back, September and October, I in one week will complete an end of year fundraising campaign. So that's like, all 14 emails, the hard copy appeal, the social templates, the peer to peer package. It's just like the whole kit and caboodle. So it really varies depending on the seasons. The early part of the year tends to be my slow season, which is great because coming into a new year, I like that. And then it's just kind of a hodgepodge of running my communities, supporting my clients, creating new offers, listening to the needs and wants of people so that I'm producing things that are helpful. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, but right now we're in a season of optimizing.
I read somewhere that as a soloist or an entrepreneur, that you just should spend about 20%, at least if you can, up to 20% of your time working on your business instead of in your business to get
Mm,
off that little hamster wheel of the day to day operations and take the time, to your point, plan, organize, reflect to make sure that you're still on the right path. You still know where you want to go and where you're heading in the right direction. And then if there's any ways to automate or optimize the process to help you get there, that this is a very useful and beneficial exercise to do. So happy to hear you're doing that, taking that time.
yeah, it takes discipline though. It's
Mm.
it's really hard, especially when inquiries come in and people want to work with you. And as someone that runs an independent business, there's always that kind of lingering fear that the work will dry up. So this is taking quite a lot of discipline for me, which is one of my low five on the strength finders. I'm not focused, I'm not disciplined, I'm an activator, I move at the speed of light. So this is hard, but it's also I'm at a breaking point where like this needs to happen. So I've said it out loud to a few people that will keep me accountable. I'm saying it out loud here, so there's no turning back now.
So one of the accomplishments that I know you most for is the Slack workspace, the Slack community called
Mhm.
Nonprofit Coaches and Consultants. Can you explain a bit more about why you decided to start that community?
Yes, sure. So, because I host a variety of virtual summits, I think at this point, I will host my sixth Raise More Together summit this August, which is a summit specifically for nonprofit fundraisers, and it's all about fundraising. I think at this point, we've recruited over 100 speakers between the various different versions of it. I've become kind of this, as mentioned, connector where people were asking me for a lot of referrals and things. And in getting to know all these other nonprofit consultants, people started to reach out and say, "Hey, Jess, I want to know, can we meet for a Zoom coffee? I want to hear more about your business." And at a certain point, going back to what I also said about one-on-one calls draining me, I was like, I cannot do this many calls every single week. And so to compensate, I formed this Slack channel, and we also have a monthly meetup that's kind of hot seat coaching, peer mastermind style, where people can come together, ask their questions around their business, and get answers from other nonprofit consultants who really understand what it's like to serve nonprofit clients. And as of today, that group has grown to, I think, almost over 500 people, which is just wild to me. It's super supportive, it's super active and engaged. I mean, like, I just love how people are in there answering other people's questions and providing resources, and people are sharing speaking opportunities or paid work, or just there's a lot of activity going on. So I'm so glad it's filling this need, but it was really a, a fix to to save some of my calendar, free up some of my calendar.
It's a great resource. It's encouraging for a lot of people in the Slack community because um, they support each other. They ask questions. They can, simple questions, simple answers, kind of thing. But even more complicated answers and questions get answered. People have, I'm sure, even connections through there. It's a great way to foster deeper connections with people in the same space and collaborate to a certain extent. So I'm very grateful that
Hmm.
you started that.
Thank you. I'm glad you're in there.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm curious to know. So, 500, just over 500. What is the most surprising thing that you've noticed by creating this kind of community? There must be some kind of odd thing where you scratched your head at some point and saying, "That's I'm surprised. I didn't expect this to happen," and that kind of occurred.
Yeah. I think the most unsurprising thing is that fellow nonprofit consultants, number one, are craving community. They are craving connection with other business owners who really get it. It seems to me that so many of us have an experience where they've tried to, whether it's work with a coach or work with other business owners, and it's just not really apples to apples when you serve nonprofit clients. And so having a space of people that, like I said, just really get it feels good. It feels supportive. I think the other thing that has accidentally come out of it is this kind of beautiful, whether you call it accountability or peer pressure or leveling each other up. I very much encourage in the Slack channel for folks to share their wins. We even have a channel called Shameless Plugs where people can promote things that they're offering or selling. And I want to create a culture for nonprofit consultants where earning revenue is nothing to be ashamed about, and for getting clients or growing your email list or creating a thought leadership audience is celebrated. I My friend Cindy Wagman, who I host the Confessions podcast with, she used a great term. She said that nonprofit consultants have this like massive hangover from working in the nonprofit space, that is scarcity, is that we have to do everything for free. And so I think when you're surrounded by other people that are like, I just secured a six-figure client, or I just grew my email list to 25,000 people, or I just, did whatever win. I just spoke on stage at whatever amazing conference. That pushes you to be like, oh, I can do that too. I need to be doing that too. And that high tides raise all ships. So I love that outcome out of it. And I think one thing I just also love is just, as you mentioned, it's just so supportive. Like everyone there is really rooting each other on. And in a space where, like, I know you're based in Montreal, I'm based in Southern California. We've got people on the East Coast. We've got people in Guam. We've got people literally all over the place that are just working in our little offices. We also need connection, and Zoom is great, but I think having a different kind of space online that I also plan to take in person is just something we're all really craving. And it's just been like this beautiful result out of what was kind of a happy accident.
To your point, there's a theme in the past few weeks about burnout and
Mm,
people. Because I think there's quite a few people who are either entrepreneurs or solo practices or very small businesses, and they feel like they're pushing hard, and maybe as an outcome of COVID and all that, that they're these days they're feeling a bit either lost or overwhelmed to a certain extent. And they're reaching out to your point of showing their vulnerability. And there are others that are coming in saying, I'm in the same boat. Don't worry about it. And that support mechanism is so powerful, I think, to know that you're
mhm,
not in a bad place or a not preferable place at a moment in time, that there are other people going through the same experience and then leaning on each other. To your point, I like
mhm.
that expression. Was it high tide raises all ships? That's a good expression I've never heard before.
Yeah. I don't know where it comes from, but I heard it too, and clearly I like it. Yeah.
On the flip side, though, I'm sure out of the 500 and so participants in the community, not all of them are active, or
Mhm.
maybe some of them have been. Has there been any kind of um, moments where you've had to filter out people, or like, do you do that kind of mechanism, or you just kind of let it grow organically and see where things go, and then decide from there what to do next?
Yeah, so the timing of your question's timely because as of today, I've just announced that it's moving to a paid community. And to your point, it's because there are right now 519 people or something like that, which have come all organically. People inviting fellow friends, me sharing about it. It's really easy to join. I don't even charge an email address. You just kind of come in. The one rule I've had is that you have to be a nonprofit consultant. So there hasn't been any space for like the fellow nonprofit tech companies. And that's just because one of the things that we talk about quite frequently in the group is around pricing and sponsorships and pitching. And I just always want people to feel super safe and comfortable about negotiating those things. And if you have the person you're negotiating to in the group, it just becomes a whole different conversation. But moving forward, I want this group to be people who want to be there. And I think that when you pay attention. And I don't need this group to be in the hundreds. Like I said, I started this kind of on a whim. And I want it to grow and evolve with people who want to be active and participatory. And so it's a super affordable price moving forward. I wanted it to be kind of like a no-brainer price, but enough where if like people are not interested, then they won't be involved. And that's okay too. I've shared other resources and there's other communities for nonprofit consultants, and we'll just see how that goes forward. I'm all about experimenting in my business. And so this is in some ways a bit of that.
And you said in the pre-show that you were a bit nervous and you got some
Yeah.
emotions about this because it is tough to move from a free resource to a paid resource. And I imagine there'll be a few people that decide not to continue
Yeah.
being a participant of the community. Any emotions you want to share or feelings about that, and how heavy was that decision? Because it makes total sense. I said before,
Yeah.
it people will respect and listen to advice that they have to pay for. Like going to a
Mhm.
therapist, for example, they will pay, you will pay more attention to a therapist that charges you versus a friend that kind of gives you casual advice. There is something
Mhm.
to be said about the trade of money for advice. So I
Mm.
totally understand and respect the decision to move to a paid community. But at this flip side, it's, there are
It's
implications of doing
painful.
that. It is painful. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. So for everyone listening, especially if well, this could be if you run a nonprofit or you run a consulting business or coaching business. There's this book that I have been reading this summer called 10x is easier than 2x. And it's really challenging me in all the right ways. And one of the chapters is dedicated to deciding when you want something and not having to justify it. And the author, the way they speak about it is, especially like around pricing, it's okay to just say, because I want to, period. You don't need to justify that to anyone. And secondly, as mentioned, and what you just said, I think is true. And I've been in enough communities where even if I pay a low dollar price, I'm that much more likely to engage and be involved. And if I'm building a community built on not only the advice I give and share, but that others do, I need people to be active participants. There's also just like an energy about it, around people hanging on and watching. And I want to create a community that has, like I said, participants. And so if you're interested in watching and reading and lurking, there's other communities where you can do that. This just isn't the one for you. And I, as a marketer, know that taking something away from people is literally, like, statistically proven 2 times more painful as it is to give something away. I think there was a study where they asked people if they were to give them $100, like if they were to bet on something and get $100 versus lose a bet and lose $150, which would feel more painful, and like 90% of people chose the loss. So I know that there will be big feelings around this, and that's why I'm giving people over a month's notice. I'm also giving people that are in the community a founding member pricing for life. um and I also just, yeah, I want to do this in my business. The amount of hours I spend in this community, um are, we did 18 months of this free, and it's the next evolution, and I'm comfortable with that. And if people have big feelings about that, I totally understand. And that's why I've also provided other places that people can go if this is no longer the place for them. That's okay.
Yeah. The principle is called loss aversion or aversion,
Mhm.
and I think the numbers you said, like, it's 2 to 1. So it's if they lose $50 or gain $100, they'd be more um, afraid of losing that
Twice as
$50. Yeah,
twice as
twice.
painful.
Just
Yeah.
to make sure the numbers. I think I'm not sure the numbers you mentioned, but I heard a bit different. So I wanted to make sure it's clear. Yeah, it's two. It really is 2 to 1, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. There's also a certain sense of when you're paying for something, you do get a higher quality something. And like you said, people are more likely to participate, more likely to be engaged. You'll have less lurkers just sitting there. And if you do want to lurk, I mean, you still can. There's nothing that obviously prevents you from doing it, but you'll be more motivated to participate. So you have a more active community. It should just grow. So
Mhm.
my fingers are
Yeah.
crossed that it'll get better and better over time.
Thank you. And I think that there's a different study out of Stanford that says you are culmination of, like, 90, is it either the 5 people you spend the most time around, or it's like 95% of you is like who you spend your time with. And if you want to be in a community of lurkers, I think that that will perhaps create you to be a lurker. And if you surround yourself with people who are action takers and participants and all these things, you are going to become that version of yourself. And so that's, again, the community I'm trying to create. Um, and and if you're like on a slower path or a different path, again, it's totally good. It's just this one's probably not the right one for you.
Yeah, the expression that I learned was show me who your top five friends are, your top closest friends are, and I'll show you who you are. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Totally, totally.
I'm curious in terms of having a community in general. Um, do you have moderators? Is something that you need to moderate? Is there filters or um, how do you
Mm,
manage basically the community on a more day-to-day level to make sure people are respecting the rules that you've set in place, posting in the
yes,
right place, not posting
yes.
things that are harmful to others? Like, is that I must occupy a certain amount of your time and attention, right?
Definitely. I have to say, for the most part, people have been really, really, really respectful. And we use Slack as our community. And the way Slack kind of operates, while I have pinned different rules and channels and things, it can be easy to miss. And so, one of the reasons that motivated me for moving this to a paid community is that it does require a certain significant level of my time. And what I've tried to do is if someone isn't respecting the rules, which has happened so few and far between, and it really is more of just an accident than like an effort, I will just message them separately and explain the rules and repin the rules so that they're aware. Some people have huffed and puffed about it, and other people are just really super like okay with it. I also follow the practice that no comment goes unanswered. So sometimes people get in there and they are able to jump in and respond to folks straight away, and then other people's don't. And I really, really, really want people in my group to feel seen. So, what I do is I either respond with an answer or I will respond and tag other people in the group that I know will have the answer to kind of construct a conversation starter or an answer thread or whatever. But all of this, like you said, takes time. I mean, whether it looks like it or not, I am in that Slack channel, watching, observing, moderating, answering, and I love it. It's great. But like I said, it takes time. And so I'm grateful that for the most part, people are just, quote unquote, following the rules. There's not many, and posting in the right channel and also crafting things to be the wants and needs of the group. So for example, just recently, one of our members who's really into all things AI was like, hey, can we start an AI channel where we're sharing resources and prompts and things like that? And I was like, absolutely. And so now we've got that channel for those that want to participate. We have the same thing for course creators or people who run a podcast or who people are writing a book. And again, it's like these little sub communities within this larger community that I think really makes our group unique and special. And the cool thing about Slack is that there's this kind of thread history. So if you're just popping in for the first time, even though a conversation's been going on for 60 days, you can kind of see what that's all about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Slack, much more over Teams and stuff like that. So the technology works. It just works.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm curious to know. So aside from changing it now to the paid community, having maybe more of these mini sub communities within the Slack, any other aspirations? Like if you were to be able to, I don't know if you had a chance yet as you're going through this summer exercise of planning, but
Mhm.
what are your longer term or medium term, as 2 to 5 year type plans for the community?
For the community? Oh gosh. So the community, I, as mentioned, really want to design it based on the wants and needs of the community. So once we move it fully to a paid space, I will then inquire with community members around what they want. I've surveyed folks before and I was actually quite surprised at how much what it is currently is kind of what people want. Other things that people may want, which need to be reevaluated, include things like co-working sessions, over the shoulder sessions where people share their computer screen and show how they're building a funnel or showing their ads manager, they're showing how they do this trick in Excel, bringing in experts, things like that. But I really want to evaluate it not based on what I want, but what others want. The other thing I plan to do is attached to the Slack community is a learning experience called the Raise More Together conference. I've run it, I think, 3 times virtually. And in February 2024, we're taking that experience in person, which I'm so excited about. It's just going to be unlike anything out there. There is no specific nonprofit consultant conference that I know of, at least in person. There's definitely sessions at like the larger institution ones for consultants, but this whole thing will be for consultants, and it's going to be like the anti-conference conference. It's going to be just, I don't know how to say it, my vibe. Just a lot of community, a lot of fun, a lot of outside the box style thing. I'm so excited about it, and I know people are really pumped to gather in person. I was speaking to a consultant yesterday, and she was like, I'm really wanting connection. Like, I'm really wanting to be with my peers. I work by myself. I'm missing being a part of a team. She was like, can make it happen be like next week already. And I was like, well, planning something in person for 60 people is just a different lift than hosting something virtually. So that's a direction it's going on. And then attached to that is this newsletter I'm building. So I've been a huge fan of email marketing for years. I think it's the lifeblood of my business. I think it could and should be the lifeblood of anyone's business, even if you just work one on one with clients. To have the ability to call in business through an email list has just been so powerful for me. And so, one of the things that I'm doing over the summer is really optimizing my email list for nonprofit consultants. It's getting a new name, it's getting a new logo, it's getting a new format. And I'm really, really excited about that as well.
It's lovely to hear that. I mean, you're definitely part of the community in the sense that you're asking for and receiving feedback from the community itself. It's not just you making the decisions as a boss behind the screen, but you're actually asking people what they want and then providing it, which is awesome. And then, yeah, in person, I totally get the need, the craving for meeting face to face. We're so used to over the last few years, working remotely through Zoom and whatnot, but the opportunity to meet each other face to face, I mean, there's nothing like it.
No.
It's
Yeah, you just can't quite replicate it on Zoom. Zoom is a great alternative, but it just cinches up relationships so much faster and deeper in person. And I cannot wait to gather people.
just seeing how tall people are. I find is
Yeah, totally.
there's just something about it. I mean, obviously we're built to be more in person than we're not meant to be as humans in front of a screen all the time. But just seeing this, sizing somebody up, just being able to see their body language much more clearly, it's really a pleasure. It's you soak it all in, and yeah, I miss it a bit too, as you can tell.
Yeah. I think we all do, which is why as scary as it is, it's just like I said, a totally different beast hosting something in person from an expense standpoint, from a planning standpoint, from a, vulnerability standpoint. It's just like talk about 10x. But I've just been thinking about it for too long, and I just said enough is enough. I'm gonna do it. And so far it's going really well. I think we've like already sold 30 or 35% of tickets. I know it will sell out. I'm working on some sponsor recruitment later this summer. So it's going to be great. It's scary, but I mean, business can be scary sometimes. And then you do it, you conquer it, and then it's downhill from there.
Short term is planning, organizing for the summer, then going back to your regular scheduled program in the fall. Any other ambitions you have, outside anything we've discussed so far that you'd like to accomplish in your short term future?
Mm, I I'm really hoping that this journey of optimization will allow me to work a little smarter, not harder in my business. I am realizing that I'm not motivated financially, which is probably why it's taken me so long to, for example, charge for this Slack community. When it comes to even my pricing for clients, my peer mastermind is just always encouraging me to increase those, that kind of thing. But I really value my free time, really. And while I love work, I do not want to be working this hard in the next 3, 5 years. I like open space on my calendar. And so I'm hoping this optimization will really, like I said, allow me to speed up on some of these things that can be running behind the scenes without me actually spending my time on them live and quote unquote in person, whether that's on a Zoom call or actually in person. And that's just so I can be able to, be a present wife and a good mom and read books and go outside and just enjoy my life. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I created my business, is so that I could do what I want when I want. And I'm always surprised when I ask other nonprofit consultants like what their end game is, that so many of them say this. I'm like, really? This is your end game? Because I have visions of, I don't know, like restoring properties or writing a book or opening a shop or who knows? But I definitely don't know if I'm going to be doing this for the next 30 years, certainly not at this pace. So I think any little baby step I can take towards that bigger, larger goal of my freedom of time is kind of like my mecca, is the place I'm trying to get to.
I totally agree. Creating space, that should be one of the reasons why we became freelance or consultants,
Hmm.
is to create that space to balance our life. So it's not just all work and no play, but we do have a bit of play. And hopefully over time, it's that amount of play grows and grows.
Totally.
Jess, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people get in touch with you if they wanted to get in touch with you online?
Yes. So LinkedIn is the place that I've been hanging out most lately. You can also visit me at jesscampbell.co if you're a nonprofit consultant. And then I also hang out on Instagram, but a little less lately. And that handle is outintheboons_.
Jess, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.